Alright YouTube, so we are back, of course, talking about some Final Fantasy VII Remake, and what we have today is kind of interesting. So we're sort of, in a roundabout way, talking about the Orchestra concert again, but we're not talking about that specifically. But there was this, pamphlet that was accompanying the concert that I think probably would have been an actual item they handed out to, the live audience, I would imagine. But obviously there wasn't a live audience, but it's something you can view now digitally. Now, in order to view this pamphlet digitally, you have to come over to this website, which I'll, of course, have linked in the description below. You have to fill out the survey. Now, your answers are irrelevant. This one's male, female, this is your age, this is where you're from, whatever. And there's a couple pages to this. What the answers you give are super irrelevant. Anyways, it'll bring you to this page right here. And you want to click on this right here, the picture of what is supposed to be a newspaper for Midgar. It'll bring you to the PDF file where you can view it. Now, before we kind of hop into it, there are a couple problems with this. For one, the PDF file, of course, is in Japanese. Now, I was able to find a website that could somewhat translate the document once you download it. Now, it's not by any means accurate. It's kind of like Google Translate, how it's super weird. Some words are accurately translated, some aren't. The other issue is that you're not allowed to use anything from this without permission. I did not know that. It's right below the PDF file link at the end of that clip I just showed. Right below that tells you can't use or reprint it or anything like that without permission. And I did not know that until right before I started recording. I just happened to keep scrolling through Audrey's Twitter because she's doing translations of this, and she actually mentioned that. And I was like, oh shit, really? And also, I wouldn't care about showing stuff in the video if I knew that Square Enix would only, maybe copyright claim the video, which is where, they get the money from the video or whatever, but your video stays up. But more than likely, they would strike the video and have it taken down, which they've done in the past to me. There's a time last year where I had, 2 strikes on my channel. Because of them, they took 2 of my videos down. A 3rd strike, the channel would have been gone. So more than likely, they have a history of doing this, so it's not worth me getting a strike on the channel. Now, 1 strike isn't that big of a deal. All it does is prevent you from, live streaming for 3 months, but it's not worth risking, you know what I mean? Now, the newspaper itself is pretty interesting because it's from the perspective of, if you were an actual member of Midgar, the daily newspaper. And it's actually the date set for the newspaper is 2/13, which was the day of the concert, February 13th. Now, there is so much within this newspaper. Some of it's interesting, a lot of it kind of isn't, but there's stuff there's an ad for, Costa del Sol. A 3-night stay there costs, 15,000 gil, apparently, for 3 nights at Costa del Sol. Thought that was kind of interesting. There's also an ad within the newspaper for, Avalanche and, 7th Heaven, for Avalanche to get some work. There's also an ad from Wedge himself, looking for one of his, apparently lost cats. Something else that really stuck out to me is there's a section within the newspaper for the best-selling books within Midgar, but one of the books is The Legend of Shinra, which was an Easter egg we looked at a couple weeks back, but it's a book within the game that you're not really ever supposed to see because it's sitting the Turk's desk during a cutscene, and somebody took the camera in that scene, moved around the office, and that's how we discovered the book. But this section or article of the newspaper would be the first real way we would have ever seen this, if not for that Easter egg that was found. Something else that's in this newspaper that's kind of funny that is something you just never expect really is the character Ottoman. Now, if you don't know who that is off the top of your head, I wouldn't be surprised. It's the actual name of the character who is Scarlet's footrest. The guy that I'm most jealous of when it comes to Final Fantasy VII Remake. Anyways, Ottoman took out an ad within the newspaper asking for advice on how to handle his boss that's harassing him at work. I thought it was kind of interesting, kind of funny a little bit. And Audrey actually did a translation of this, so we're going to read that. So the ad says, I can't keep up with my boss. I'm experiencing power harassment at work with my boss. They always give me unreasonable requests on a daily basis. They even use me as their own personal footrest, like a dog. There was an explosion the other day, and it looked like they were going to leave me in the facility too. What should I do with them? Sincerely, Ottoman. And the reply they got are, well, seems like your boss works for a very famous industry in a managerial position, so they must be incredibly busy. They probably aren't good with expressing their stress and perhaps think of you as a cute dog. We suggest you go approach them directly and try to talk to them about this. Ottoman taking out an ad within the Midgar newspaper asking how to deal with Scarlet, who uses him as a footrest, is some super deep lore that you just wouldn't get anywhere else, which is why I found this thing so interesting. It just sucks that we can't talk about it more or show stuff. Now, one of the things from this that really stuck out to a lot of people is that there's a weather forecast, weather report that they have within the newspaper that mentions a couple of locations around the map of Gaia, around the world. And obviously that piques people's interest just because it makes you wonder, are these locations we're going to see in the next game? Why these locations specifically? Anyways, the weather they give is for Midgar, Junon, Costa del Sol, Gongaga, and Wutai. Now, at first, it doesn't seem like anything important. Obviously, they're going to give you weather for Midgar. Junon is a pretty popular location, and so is Costa del Sol. Plus, those two are kind of connected because of the cargo ship stuff. But the ones that stick out to me are the other two. For one, Gongaga is a tiny little village. Why would they give the weather for that as opposed to something like Rocket Town or Nibelheim or Icicle Inn or these other places that are obviously bigger, more important towns overall? Gongaga, we just quickly pass through. You don't even have to go to it. You can bypass it and just go straight to Cosmo Canyon. I believe it's not until after the Midil segment where you wake up in Gongaga Village. That's the only time that you're ever forced to go there. It's almost an entirely optional place. The other one obviously is Wutai. Like, why are they giving the weather report for Wutai when that's like their enemy? Like, that's like the Shinra / Midgar enemy. The Wutai War is currently on pause in the Remake universe. It's supposed to be over in the original game. For some reason with Remake it's still happening. Even within like the fictional universe of Remake, if the newspaper isn't controlled by Shinra, it's maybe like a public thing, the citizens of Midgar aren't going to give a shit about Wutai. Like, if you just hear the people talking, the NPCs in Remake, they just like shit talk Wutai, don't like Wutai, scared of Wutai. Those two just really stuck out to me. Like, you could do other locations. Like, for one, Calm. I know it's like really close to Midgar in terms of like FF7, but if we're talking about the span of an actual world, Calm would be pretty far away from Midgar. Would probably have its own weather. And the Gold Saucer. Now, it's like a almost entirely indoor, like theme park type thing. But it'd still be like a very popular location within the world of Gaia, debatably the most popular location because it's like a tourist attraction thing. It seemed like very specific to choose Gongaga and Wutai. I know it's just like a throwaway thing within the newspaper, but it really stuck out to me for some reason. But of course, with them name-dropping specific locations around the world of Gaia, it has people kind of questioning and wondering, like, is this something we're going to see within the next game? For one, they talk a lot about Wutai throughout the first game, right? There's NPC dialogue and, Shinra and things like that. They mention Wutai. It would be kind of weird to like hype up Wutai so much within the first game, and then when the next game comes out, like, we don't ever see Wutai. It's not something we get till like the third game potentially. That'd be kind of underwhelming. Same thing with some of these other locations, like this newspaper's alluding to Costa del Sol like twice with the weather report, then also the ad for like the 3-night stay in Costa del Sol, and then like if the next game comes out and we don't ever get to that point, like maybe we only go up to Junon, we don't get to see Costa del Sol, that'd be kind of weird. We also had like the name drop of Cosmo Canyon with like the drink within the Seventh Heaven, but I think there might have been some other references to Cosmo Canyon as well. I don't really remember. And the thing is, if you really pay attention to like all the name drops that I've ever seen, like it only goes up to a certain point. Like if you're not including Wutai, because that would theoretically be like the furthest location we travel to, not including Wutai, we've only heard up to like Cosmo Canyon. Right after Cosmo Canyon is Nibelheim, which is where a lot of us seem to think that Part 2 would end. It seems like they almost intentionally avoid mentioning locations that would be beyond like Cosmo Canyon and like Nibelheim. Like they don't talk about, again, Icicle Inn, Rocket Town, Middeal, things like that. Things that we probably wouldn't see in the second game. And to be honest, my dude, that's pretty much the video. I wanted to show and talk about a lot more, but whenever I learned I can't show anything from this, it was a real punch to the dick, because there's a lot of other things I wanted to reference and talk about. But what we might do is in a couple of days, like when we do our next upload potentially, and Audrey's translated a lot more of this, if there's more interesting things to talk about, we'll probably cover that as well. And as I said near the beginning of the video, I'll have the link to the survey down below. Again, your answers do not matter. Click whatever box you want. There's a couple areas where you got to type something. It doesn't matter what you type. I just type the word yes in every box. So you can at least go check this out and kind of look over the stuff that we couldn't really talk about within this video. Either way, my dudes, that's the video. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you guys already want to see more Final Fantasy VII Remake content. Turn on notifications. Follow me on Twitter at dashingdavidYT and my Discord. Links to my social networks are in the description and in the outro. Later, guys.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect, we spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane, we in here like Low Gain, or leave it like Cobain.